Good morning. I'm just going to get myself a wee bit organized. It's so lovely to be here. Thank you so much to Creative Mornings for inviting me to speak today. Thank you also to the Outpost and Naeem and the Monday Coffee. And I also wanted to say thank you and acknowledge the Yarraga and Turrbal peoples. I'm a new Aussie, and I'm very honoured and proud to live in Australia. And I really would love to see Australia move to be the lucky country for all of us. And so I acknowledge the traditional owners and custodians of this land. And I would just love to pay my respects to the elders past and present and future. And yeah, that's something that I really look forward to. So thank you for having me here. Now, there's two things I have to say about this slide. The first is, my branding has been Steele My Style for the last 10 years, and a professional did that. And then because the business has evolved so much, I, on a whim, as you do, was like, oh, really? Steele My Style doesn't really kind of work for me anymore. I think I'm just going to, express what I've been expressing for the last kind of 3-4 years and create a logo so I can show someone exactly what I want. So, yeah, this is what happened. And then I thought, yeah, that's kind of exactly what I want. And I thought I'll just get a graphic designer friend of mine to just kind of tweak it, make sure it looks okay, and I showed it to her. We've been on a shoot. For the last 3 days, I've been on a shoot, creative director and producer of the shoot. And I showed it to her on Wednesday. And I said, hey, babe, do you have a chance just to kind of look over this and, just space it up and stuff? And she was just like, I don't have time to do this right now. This needs a lot of work, Sal. And I was like, fuck. And she said, why? And I was like, she was like, you haven't already used this, have you? And I was like, maybe. And she was like, oh, okay. So I would just like to, if it's really irking people, I'm sure there's a lot of you that are like, oh, that's really upsetting me. Yeah, it's not going to look like that for long. And I am going to move the slide, and it's not all the way through, so don't worry about that. The second thing I really wanted to point out about this slide was, I don't know if you can see or recognize which person in the left is me, but I'm in the red velour play suit, and I'm wearing a riding hat. I just want to point out that I wasn't going riding, and I hadn't been riding that day. So that was I just felt like wearing a riding hat that day, as you do. Now, you might guess from my accent that my roots are not Brisbane. Does anyone want to hazard a guess as where I'm from? Yay, Scotland. So I am from Scotland. I'm from a place called Glasgow. And Glasgow is really renowned for its cozy camaraderie. It's one of those places that really affirmations kind of started from. And so I grew up in a city where, you were just surrounded by amazing mantras all the time that you could just go, yeah, I feel the love. Things like, who does she think she is? Also, another one of my favorites, she's got ideas above her station, so she has. And my personal favorite, she pure loves herself, by the way. Now, luckily, I was actually brought up to love myself, to have ideas above my station, and to really think big. And that's really down to the people that were around me. And it's kind of hard because I've been in Australia 20 years now, and if I told you my degree, I have a master's in French literature, I have a bachelor, a BA in German, I have a PGCE in secondary school teaching. I have taught in Japan. I've taught high school. I was a high school teacher teaching French, German, Japanese. I also was a protocol manager. What else? And now, when it's quite weird, when I express what I do and people know what I did before, I think it's something that people struggle with a lot. If you do lots of different things, you know that awful thing about, jack of all trades, master of none? I think that young people are much better at handling that, and I found that really hard. When I was doing lots of things, I felt like I needed to kind of make an excuse for it and go, well, I used to work in film, but now I'm working in fashion, and I do strategy, but I also do this, and it all felt like I wasn't really wearing it properly. And now I actually had a wonderful client. She said to me, you know what, Sal? You know what? The only thing that you need to work on is you really need to kind of work on your elevator pitch. And I was like, that sounds fucking horrible. And she said, but you really need to find a way to express what you do without making apologies for all the different places that you work. And I think that's something that a lot of people really struggle with. And so now when people ask me what I do, I say this with a straight face. Yeah. So I say, I enable confidence because I don't actually believe you create confidence. I think that's bullshit. I think that everybody has it. And it's a wee muscle that you just have to kind of play and work on the same way as you do with, your green living and stuff. I challenge mindsets and behavior when I'm with people in the work that I choose to do, and also in the way that I kind of work with clients. I will challenge their mindset and the behavior. I maximize potential, which is one of my favorite things. I do that in individuals, in businesses, in brands, and events. And I love helping other people to think big. I think something when I speak to people and I say, with strategy or mentoring clients, and I go, okay, where do you want to see the business? And I think it's really hard. People sometimes go, I'd really like to be making a living, doing, what I love. And you're like, no. Fuck that shit. Tell me what you actually want and actually say it out loud. The big thing, the big thing that you sometimes feel a wee bit scared to do. And they go, I want to be the go-to brand for, whatever it is. You go, there you go. All right. Well, let's make that happen. You got to go for that one. And if lots of people say no or stop you, you come back from that. You don't start down there. So that's something that I love when clients kind of feel that I give them permission, they say. But I'm like, I'm not fucking giving you permission. I'm just allowing you to say what you really want to do, which is something I love. And create meaningful brand connections. And I say that because fucking hell, there's a lot of shit out there with branding and marketing and publicity. And I've now been doing this for 25 years, and I sit in lots of boardrooms and I hear agencies talk about what they're going to do, and I'm just like, stop with your analytics and your brand synergy and just tell me what you're actually going to do. Because I think that's something that it's all about, you have to have a brand a certain way. And I really am part of a movement that I believe is grounded in real life. I actually don't love technology that much. I also really don't love admin, but I love stationery. But it's one of those things. I'm kind of old school and I'm kind of happy about it. And I want to create meaningful brand connections. It's not about how many followers or all of that. I like to tell a story. Now, I really love lots of different speakers. I love lots of different thinkers. And I have 2 children. And, there was something I wanted to read to you because I feel like it gets lost. Because there's so much out there, your Brené Browns and, Paulo Coelho, who I love. But, does anyone know where this comes from? Yeah, Dr. Seuss, and, that he kind of gets trivialized, I think, a little bit, and it's a bit trite, and you see all these Pinterest and Instagram posts, and you're like, yeah, right, okay. But I just want to read this to you because it kind of captures something. All the places you'll go, you'll be on your way up. You'll be seeing great sights. You'll join the high flyers who soar to high heights. Now at this point, you're like, all right, fucking put a wee font on that, and off you go. You won't lag behind because you'll have the speed, you'll pass the whole gang, and you'll soon take the lead. Wherever you fly, you'll be best of the best, and wherever you go, you'll top all the rest. Except when you don't. Because sometimes you won't. I'm sorry to say so, but sadly it's true that bang-ups and hang-ups can happen to you. And I remember reading this as a kid, and that was the part I really loved about it. And I think that if you read that whole story again, it's actually really cool, because it is true that life really, the fun part of life is not that it's all going to go smoothly. And in terms of roots, it's been a very tangled, mass of roots that have got me to this place here. And I wanted to talk a little bit about them, and maybe it might be useful to you guys. There's a lot of much younger people than me. I turn 50 next year, and I've been working for 25, maybe a bit more, if you add in cafes and all the stuff you do in between while you're trying to make money to actually study. But I was brought up in Glasgow, as I said, and one of the reasons that I have the outlook that I have, one of the reasons that I actually have been able to do the things I have done is primarily because of my parents. So my dad was borderline delusional, in terms of his levels of optimism. You know, if he broke down, which happened with monotonous regularity, because we had an old Volvo and we often didn't have that much money to do the whole making sure that the petrol tank was full. My dad would just make a joke of it, and he'd say, he'd just slip it into neutral, and we'd go down the hill freewheeling, and it was like, woohoo! But he also would, if it was in a bad part of town, my dad would be like, don't worry everybody, this is just an opportunity to make some new friends, so cool. And my dad was so charming that he would have the drunks from the dodgy pub out helping us, pushing the car or whatever. And so when my father, he also had a very individual way of dressing. And I think that what I took from him was his absolute care not a jot what anyone thought of him. My mum and dad worked very hard to send me to a very nice private girls' school, which I loathed. But it meant that he would turn up to parents' evenings in said fur trapper's hat with this manky, oil-covered, kind of quilted, padded Swedish naval jumper, rugby shorts, and clogs. And not care, absolutely not care. My mother is the type of person that can start a party where there is none. And she taught me about sustainability and loving and curating rather than consumption. Consumption was never something that was created in our house as a hobby. We never, that wasn't something we were brought up thinking that consumption is living, which I pass on to my children. But also, my mother was very good at making me know that all of this, is nothing. This is just for kicks, how I express myself. But actually, what's important is how I make the use of everything else inside. My dreams, my aspirations, my skill set, that's what the effort and I guess the emphasis was on. Now, this was great because my father's business went under, probably about 1979. He was a very clever refrigeration engineer, and it went under. But my dad, rather than frame it as that, was like, we're just going to have a little bit of an adventure. An adventure is something that also comes in my past. Here are some of my ancestors. This is, on this side is my grandfather, which I wonder if you can choose which guy he is. He's with the royal family, the Danish royal family there, just chilling, in his white suit, as you do, which was quite unusual then. Also, I have a great-grandfather who is buried in Buenos Aires because he got shipwrecked a lot. He was a captain, and he got shipwrecked on an island just off Argentina for about 4 months. And so I kind of was brought up to be adventurous and just try stuff out, and not really worry about the consequences too much, which is kind of handy. I was also taught to be myself on purpose, no matter what that meant, which was really nice. And I kind of, as you can see in that bottom, this one where I'm half white, half black, I'm not creative, but I sewed together this total visage-inspired outfit with a tuxedo and a tutu and went to a club, but it wasn't like a fancy dress night. So my dad actually had to move to Saudi Arabia in the middle of the desert. So my life went from, private girls' school in a suburb, and then I was suddenly in Saudi Arabia in the middle of the Nafu desert, flying in age 11 in a Learjet on my own and landing. And so our life was very different there. My dad was in Saudi Arabia for about 8-9 years. And I used to see him, it went from seeing him like most kids, the odd night during the week, to seeing him maybe once a year, twice a year. And then my mom really missed my dad, so she went traveling with my dad. So then I saw my parents maybe once every 3 months, maybe my mom. And I had the choice of boarding school or staying at different relatives, and I chose the latter. So on the one hand, it was quite lonely. I had an older brother, but he's 6 years older than me. But it did really give me a sense of self-reliance. It did make me think about, I had, no one else really was there. And don't worry, I've worked through all that stuff. But when I say soak it in and absorb the best, it's that idea of looking at the role models that you've had and kind of going, okay, what can I pull from them that's actually really positive? And the thing that I have done is that idea of exploration. I went to Germany, lived in Germany on my own in an exchange family's house and then at boarding school. I went to France and lived there on my own when I was 16 before I went to uni. And I chose to go to St. Andrews because I really wanted to go into the diplomatic corps. Seriously, that was my dream. I was like, yeah, ambassador, Frere Rocher, the whole thing. And then I had a car crash in year 2, and I was airlifted to hospital by helicopter. And I was in hospital for about 4 months. Trying to learn how to walk again. And they said, oh, you need to repeat the year. And I was like, no. I'm not repeating the year, because I'm sure many of you have felt that feeling of, I just want to get on with my life. The studying stuff's great, but I definitely was in a space there where I was like, I just need to get on and out into the world. So they said the only way that you can do that is if you stand at the lectern, because I couldn't sit down, stand at the lectern and do 10 3-hour literature papers. And I was like, well, that's what I'm doing. And then a week before, I slipped and broke my elbow. Really, really, really accident prone. Car crash, not so much, but I was accident prone to the point that the local hospital, they knew my name, my first name, because I broke so many bones. So I actually had to do 10 literature papers with a scribe. It's not that easy to do that. Like when someone says, Molière's Tartuffe, discuss. And you're like, okay, the guy's there. Okay, let's go. Not so good. One of the things that I talk about a lot is trusting your gut, not your ego. And when I was at uni, I got into the diplomatic corps, and I was like, woohoo, yay. And they said, okay, you will leave university straight after graduation, come down to London and work in London for 6 years. And I was like, what? And they were like, yeah, you need to be in public office. And then I was like, oh, no. So I actually, even though my whole family were like, oh, my diplomatic corps, she's going to diplomatic corps, yeah. I was like, no, I can't do it, I can't do it. I can't do that. And so I said to my parents, I can't do it. And they were like, okay, think up something else then. So I was like, okay, and my dad said to me, okay, I'm just going to give you one piece of advice. Don't think of your career as your career. Just develop a wee bag of tricks. Lots of different skills that no matter where your life takes you, no matter what happens with the economy, you've always got something else. Even when you're in a job, think of what you can learn that's beyond that job when you're in that job. So I always took that advice. So I thought, okay, what does the world need now? And this was in 1994, and I thought, there's not very many people that speak Japanese, and it seems to be kind of coming up. And so I decided to go to Japan, and I was there for 2.5 years, teaching in the middle of nowhere, and then also became a protocol officer, helping sister cities work out their diplomatic relations. And I also spent a lot of time my own. Like, that was my in the cave time. You know, like I ditched the inner bitch. This is from the book. I totally worked out all the stuff that I had been carrying about abandonment and resentment to my family for leaving me to deal with stuff. And I just thought, I gotta fucking sort this out. And this one here, you see, you can spot me, the foreigner. This is the first day I was there. And I arrived off the plane, got into a car. They drove me 2.5 hours into into the mountains with the only English the guys in the car, there's 4 guys in the car, could say was, St. Andrews, home of golf. And so we spent 2.5 hours going, yeah, golf, St. Andrews. And then they got me ready, and that's me on the right, as if you can't see. That was a huge celebration of every single village in the whole area. And I was on display as, you know, here, look at the foreigner. And I had to open a big thing of sake, and they basically just took me and handed me a hammer, and then they gave me a speech that I had to say in front of 10,000 people, all written in English, but it was Japanese. It was really quite spectacular. But I really loved living out there, and I really learned a lot about myself. Now, I'm not a networker. I never have been. I really quite loathe networking. I'm kind of more organic, so I hate that word hustle. I'm just like, oh, I get a bit sick in my mouth when I hear it. I don't hustle. Often I've been at events where, you know, business stuff. I've had a great time chatting to somebody, and I'm like, so what are you doing here? And they're like, oh, I'm the wait staff. And I'm like, oh, wow, good to meet you, Joe. Awesome. I just like connecting and meeting people. And when I came back from Japan, I went to work in marketing and research. They actually heard me speaking Japanese, and I was in a cafe, and they said, do you speak Japanese fluently? And I was like, oh yeah, I guess. I've been there for 3 years. Do you know about, you know, have you done marketing? I was like, you know what? I did do marketing as a minor in my master's, and they were like, cool, we'll teach you everything that you need to know. So I went to work for a company called Euromonitor that does consumer research, and I did market analysis for brands trying to break into the Japanese market, Evian, Calvin Klein, The Body Shop, people like that. And obviously it was in London, and anyone who's ever worked in London knows that you need another job. So I worked at night and at weekends as well, and I got paid £1.50 an hour. And this guy here on my left is Troy Lum. Troy Lum and I became friends. We worked in the same restaurant in Putney, and we became friends. And we were actually, I'd met my husband by this point. We were actually emigrating to Canada, and he was like, what are you going to Canada for? Come to Australia. And I was like, yeah, right. And he was like, no, you'll love it. And so in '96 we came and went, oh my God, we totally need to be here. Went back and we're like, they're gonna love us. Went to the points thing, and I was like, so, degree, master's, French literature, and then it was like, usual occupation, Japanese market analysis, and it was like, wah, 0 points. And then my husband's like, okay, BA in communications and media, And your usual occupation? Restaurant troubleshooter? Wow, 0 points. So we went back to Scotland. I worked out, okay, I can do the points thing and get the points. If I go back to uni, I did a postgrad in education in French, German, and Japanese. Then I had to work as a teacher for 3 years until I could call it my usual occupation, and then we got in. And by that point, Troy Lum, who I was friends with, we stayed in touch. We were mates. He came to my wedding. That picture is the morning after, hence we're so dusty. And in that period of time, he'd gone from, coffee boy and being out of work to being the head of Dendy Films. So when I was like, hey, I'm coming, he was like, cool, you speak French, you speak German, you can do my diary for Cannes and everything. I'm like, I don't really know much about film. I mean, I love independent film and I've studied it, but I don't really know about how to promote it. He's like, we'll teach you everything. So I actually became the publicist at Dendy Films, first of all. And then Troy decided to go out on his own and start Hopscotch. And he said, do you want to come with me? And I was like, sure. So it was just the three of us in an office, him, his partner, Sandy, and me. And we had, our first film was Bowling for Columbine. And I was the publicist and all the marketing. So I kind of did about 160 film campaigns between then and now. That was really because I became friends with someone who was like-minded and we connected. I didn't meet him and go, what can this guy do for me? Which sometimes you can feel that. It's very palpable. Now, things went really well, and the business was going really well for him. I'm sure many of you have grown up on Hopscotch. And then it was going so well that DVD, home entertainment, started, and he said, hey, can you do all that too? And I'm like, you fucking kidding me? I'm doing 15 tours a year on my own. All of this, I can't do that too. He's like, well, we'll back you. Start your own company or something. I was like, oh, all right. So I started my own company, and I went to an event, and suddenly the Sydney Film Festival said, hey, we hear in the grapevine you've started your own company and you're doing other people other than Hopscotch. And I was like, yeah, they want me to do DVD. And he said, can you do Sydney Film Festival? And I was like, sounds like a little bit of a poison chalice, but yeah, okay. So I did them, World Movies, SBS, who else? The Independent Film Awards, the IF Awards, which was massive then. And within the space of a year, I went from me, myself, and I to calling out to friends, hey, do you know someone who's really great who could do this? Hey, do you know someone who's really great who could do that? And I got a team of 8 plus 5 interns. And we had a lot going on. It was fantastic. And then I found out I was pregnant. Yay. And then 2 days after my first baby was born, my mom said, you know how I was going to come and help you with the baby? I was like, yeah. She was like, I've got cancer. That's not going to happen. So my parents had actually emigrated up to Brisbane. So I brought my newborn up to Brisbane, and I was in Brisbane for 8 months as my mom went through all her surgeries, while at the same time trying to manage the office on a, video conferencing once a week, and keep my marriage intact as well. And my husband was flying up every 2 weeks. And then about 4 weeks in, at the breakfast table, my dad was like, I don't feel too good. And I was like, really? And he was like, yeah. And ended up I had to rush him to coronary intensive care. And he had heart stop. So they were doing the paddles while I'm getting the baby carriage out of, the capsule out of the car. And they said, okay, this is great. Can we, we're going to have to admit your dad. And I was like, okay. And they said, but he's only been in the country 6-7 months. And I was like, yeah. And they're like, so he's not got, how are we paying for this? And I was like, okay, what do I need? And they said, well, coronary intensive care is $3,700 a day. And I was like, okay, I can do 2 with my limit on that one. And anyway, we found out that my dad actually needed a pacemaker, which was going to cost 180 grand. So luckily I said to his specialist, anyway, we can, do this without it costing us 180 grand, because I don't know how I'm going to liquidate that much money. And he said, yeah, if you put him on total bed rest and look after him for the next 10 days, because he's a type 1 diabetic, I can get him onto the emergency list. And I was like, okay, that's what we'll do then. So I had my mum at home, double mastectomy, drains, lymph glands, 6-week-old baby, and my dad on total bed rest. So luckily, my family has got really black sense of humor. So we used to really just laugh about it. And I go, you know what? All I need now is to find out that my brother's actually my dad, and that this is a cursed gemstone that is going to age me prematurely. And we've got like the kind of plot line for Bold and the Beautiful for like 4 days. Like, amazing. Now, it's funny when you're in a shitty situation, you think, oh my God, it's so shit. And you kind of think that it can't get worse. It always can get worse. And my dad started having strokes. It was really shitful, 18 months. I got to wind it up. But ultimately, the lesson there was, I'm really glad that I left my business in Sydney. I wound it up, I made everyone redundant, and I came here 10 years ago, started again. And it's funny because at the time, people were like, oh my God, you're so brave, so brave. And I was like, I'm not fucking brave. I'm not doing anything other than being where the people that I love are and helping them. This doesn't define me. The business that I've grown in a couple of years into something really successful, it didn't define me. I was like, it's fine, let it go. Like, someone else can fucking do your press releases. But it's like that perceived disaster. We came to Brisbane and it was like, what am we gonna do here? Because there's no film industry here, or there wasn't back 10 years ago. And so I was like, okay, found out I was pregnant again, yay. And I was like, okay, I have a brand new car because the business in Sydney had been going so well. They said, you need some outgoings. And so I had a brand new car that was costing me $900 a month. And so I was like, what am I gonna do? And I thought, you know what? When I was up breastfeeding in the middle of the night, I had an epiphany. And I was like, I'm gonna wrap the shit out of this car with polka dots, and I'm gonna create a mobile business, and I'm gonna claim the fucking shit out of it. And I was like, what can I do that is easy for me? What's a skill I have that is not stressful? I was like, styling, okay. So there was a lot of people back then that needed a lot of styling in Brisbane. No shade, no shade. But you know, that idea of perceived disaster, it can lead to new opportunities. And I'm just gonna wrap up before I go, we put it to questions, and there's just a few little slides that might be quite useful to you. But what I wanted to say was, you know, we have had the most extraordinary 10 years here in Brisbane. My dad died 6 years ago, and my mom has recovered from breast cancer. She's now cancer-free. And for the last 3 years, I have 2 beautiful children, a 12-year-old and 9-year-old. And my 9-year-old's first words were Rockstar Park. Like, because I kept saying it all the time. Compared to Sydney, I was like, oh my God, Rockstar Park, right outside, this is awesome. But you know, perceived disaster can actually lead to new adventures, and that was because of the mindset my husband and I came into this with. You know, we didn't go, oh, our life's over, all our cool friends that we love, or we've got to leave our whole life. We just went, you know what, we're just going to find another dream in Brisbane, another amazing group of people that we want to hang out with. It's all good. And I'm very, very thankful. You know, my roots and blues have given me resilience, self-reliance, but I love of the present. I really I'm so on it now in terms of really taking it all in. That meditation was so great. I meditate every morning now, and it was so nice to do before I came up. These are just little slides that if they help you in some way, is this okay, Hillary, if we just do this? So there's more than one way to shine. I think that I meet lots of people and they find it really hard to think that, oh, I'm really good at this and I'm really good at that. How do I, you know? It's okay if you're a graphic designer, and then later on in your career you move more into branding, you know, and photography or something completely different just because it's a skill you naturally have. Revel in your unique skills and natural gifts. This is something that's taken me a long time to learn, but that idea that you don't need to struggle at something to actually do it as your business. I think that lots of people feel like, I need to do a course in it, I need to get a piece of paper, I need to study to do that in order. Look at the things you're actually naturally good at and see how you can make money from them. Because the things that you love and make money from, I know there's that whole, do what you love, you know. I don't mean that. I really mean, like, if you're naturally good talking to people, bring that into your business more. Stop looking sideways, you know? Stop looking sideways. Don't worry about what other people are doing. There's always going to be people doing. I find I have to really work and mentor with people who go, what do I have to say that's new in this space? And I always say to them, don't worry about it. You're you. No one is you as all of your things and your roots and everything that shaped you. No one is that. So you just have to actually feel that and go, you know what? I actually have something to say and I have something to offer here. And don't be distracted by the daily storms in a teacup and the drama. It's quite easy. Fear will derail you. Fear and, oh, it has to be perfect, like my really shitty branding. It, can derail you from actually getting stuff done. Just don't let it. And don't be paralyzed into inaction because of past failures and shame. Oh, I did like an interior design business and it didn't work. Don't stop that from letting you go to do something else. Find a way to frame that allows you to explore that side of things. And Pac-Man the shit out of all those fears and ghosts as you go. Don't wait until you're 40 to deal with all that stuff. Really start thinking about what are those things that are stopping me from doing it and really kind of eat the fear, It's like just deal with it. There's so much fear out there. Surround yourself, and this is how gorgeous Creative Mornings is, surround yourself with like-minded people. And this is a big one. I have lots of people that I work with who go, oh, my husband doesn't support my business, or nobody, like I created this whole range of t-shirts and I drew them all and no one in my family or my friends actually did it. Or I did this concert and no one came and watched it. That is my close family and friends. But other people might be doing that. I understand that. My husband is a wonderful person, but I just was like, it's not his job to cheer in that way. It's not his thing. He can be supportive, but you have to feel it inside, And just like not worry about, oh, maybe it's not good enough. That's why they're not here. No, sometimes they just don't see it in that way. They just see you as you. And don't shrink your vision of what you want to do based on the reality you're in now, or because other people don't believe that you can do it. You have to really just... People said to me, you're writing a book, and you're going to self-publish it. I was like, yeah. And they were like, how are you going to do that? And I was like, watch me. And I said to my husband, look, mate, one thing, the book's going to cost, it's either we actually create a kitchen, or I self-publish the book. And it's not like a reno thing. It was like, we don't really have a functioning kitchen. And he went, do the book. And I was like, okay, cool. So, it's that thing of just going, I'm just going to get it done however I can get it done. We still have a shitty kitchen. Anyway, thank you very much. And if there's any questions or you want to speak to me afterwards and ask me anything, I'm very open to anything like that, or email me. But thank you for having me.
Thanks, Sally.
Thank you.